You're listening to the Business Marketing Show, episode number 26. You can find us at businessmarketingshow.com, on iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. Hi everyone, Keay-Smith here from Business Marketing Show with my co-host Brendan Tully. How are you today, Brendan?
I'm good, Ed. How are you?
Very good, thank you, mate. Very good indeed. We're always in a good mood because we do this podcast on a Friday. And it's not that we don't go through life wishing that it was Friday, but some weeks Fridays are much more appealing than others. And even though it's only been a short week, because we've had a day holiday this week, it's hasn't been too bad. So, Brendan, we are going to be talking about e-commerce quick wins today.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So,
your favourite subject again. One of
our favourite subjects.
They're all our favourite subjects. This one's probably more of a favourite subject to you because you spend a lot more time in the e-commerce space than I do, and it's part of one of your business.
Yes.
And for Pareto e-commerce. So let's get into it.
Yeah, sure. So I guess the idea was we talk a lot about regular small business or traditional types of business. So I figured we would put together an episode more dedicated towards e-commerce businesses. So yeah, I do a lot of stuff with e-commerce. I used to own an online store 10 or so years ago, quite a big one. And recently we've split out our e-commerce services out into their own brand, Pareto Ecommerce. But anyway, let's get into the quick wins, I guess. Can you hear those aeroplanes overhead?
Yeah, I can hear those aeroplanes overhead. They sound like they're landing on your head.
Yeah. You might want to cut that out.
No, that's what that adds to the edit.
There's a whole bunch of fighter planes in the air lately, so I don't know what's going on.
Oh, okay. Maybe a civil war's about to break out and we don't know about. Maybe it's the zombie apocalypse.
Maybe.
This could be the last e-commerce podcast known to man before the zombie apocalypse. So let's make it a good one.
I hope not. But anyway.
It would sort of make everything we talk about completely irrelevant. But let's just go for it anyway and assume that the zombie apocalypse is not going to happen.
Yeah. All right. So I have 7 steps here. Most of them are DIY and they're pretty simple, pretty easy to wrap your head around. The first one is, and we've definitely talked about it before, or kind of glanced over on other episodes, to get Google product listing ads set up. So those are the search results that appear in Google when you type in a buying search term. So usually buy and a product name, or buy product name online, or product name for sale online, or something along those lines. Where Google detects you have online buying intent, the Google product listing ads will trigger. And we have talked about this, and I remember we talked about it in the AdWords episode, but they used to be free, but now they're paid, so they're part of AdWords. Yep. And they're kind of a combination of SEO and AdWords, so you do pay for them, but they're a lot cheaper than traditional AdWords. And when people click on them, they're a lot more qualified. So if someone's going to type in a buying term and then click on your ad, it's highly likely that they're in a kind of getting towards making a buying decision or ready to buy something. So.
Yep, that makes perfect sense. So that's a very good pre-qualification. And yeah, if you can get, well, as an example, if someone was typing in buy a Canon camera and a particular model number, as an example, as opposed to someone just typing in Canon and the model number, and just having a normal ad. So you're saying it's going to be cheaper using that tactic and having it set up in the is it still called Google Shopping, or is it?
Yes, sorry, it's called Google Shopping now. It was called Google Product Listing Ads. You're right.
Okay. I was.
Look, it used to be called Google Shopping. Then it was changed to Google Product Listing Ads. Now it's Google Shopping again.
Oh, has it gone back to it again? Oh,
yeah, because it used to be Google Shopping. They're so confused. It used to be the Google Merchant Center, Frugal, classic.
They just create jobs for themselves, these guys, so they can do something.
I think they have a whole team dedicated just to rebranding stuff for the sake of rebranding it.
Yeah, I think you're right there. Okay, so Google Shopping. So if you've got that buy in front of it, that will help target your audience and target your traffic and also reduce your costs. So great, fantastic tip. If that was the only thing that people do from the rest of this podcast, that's probably a very good one.
Yeah, like I've had a few clients lately, kind of beginner or new e-commerce sites asking to do SEO, search engine optimization, and I said no because SEO for e-commerce is very hard and very expensive. But instead I suggested they should be doing the product listing ads because in comparison it's quick. It kind of, because it is a combination of SEO and AdWords, so there are some ranking factors which determine whether your products show up, and there are some of the AdWords elements around bid, or AdWords are still an auction. So the highest bidder will typically show, but because it's a combination of both, it kind of has the strength of both. So you can turn it on, it'll start working tomorrow. You get traffic instantly, and it's actually really cheap compared to normal AdWords. So I do this before any other traffic generation tactic, and usually for most e-commerce businesses, it is the cheapest and highest quality form of traffic, probably apart from email marketing, but compared to normal AdWords or doing full SEO on the website or using something like eBay or Amazon, it's still probably the cheapest, highest quality traffic source. So
yeah. And look, we talk about email marketing, but of course the catch with email marketing is you have to build a list to be able to market to someone an email. So you've really got to go through this process first. If you don't have the original traffic coming to your site from wherever, SEO, AdWords, Google Shopping, then you can't convert that into a list. So this is really step one out of the two. But of course, once they're on the list, then you can market your products and services and specials and blah blah blah. And that as in terms of cost per conversion from the email is typically going to be a lot less than the original cost of conversion from the ads. So so yeah, I agree. I mean, I'd really have never wanted to do SEO for clients that have had e-commerce stores for the reason you mentioned before. It's very time consuming and expensive because you can typically have hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of line items that you've got to do SEO for. And how do you warrant the time that has to be spent into doing each of those? It's when doing an ad campaign with Google Shopping would be a hell of a lot quicker. So
yeah, absolutely. And that is the big thing, because if you're doing like really detailed SEO, you're not just looking to rank one keyword. There are multiple keywords for each product, so it is a lot more complex, and it's an ongoing thing. And obviously, there's a big cost attached to that. Even though, I guess we always talk about the misconception that SEO is free. It's not, because you're gonna have to do it yourself or pay someone to do it.
Yeah. So okay, awesome. So that's that one. So what's next?
What's next is good quality hosting or a cloud-based e-commerce CMS. And this is probably more for existing e-commerce businesses and I see this quite a bit, that the website still looks good and looks okay, but the underlying e-commerce engine driving the site is just not really up to scratch. It's either an old piece of software that is, it's an open source e-commerce cart that's no longer supported or no longer updated, or it's just old, or it's a custom built e-commerce CMS that the web company, whoever they got to build the website 5 years ago, that was their CMS, and in that case, typically they don't add new features like support for Google Shopping, for example, because Google Shopping needs a price feed from your database. So, what we do with a lot of clients is, the hosting, we've talked about hosting so much that it's a fundamental component. So the hosting just needs to be fast and reliable, and the website needs to be loading in under 5 seconds. And particularly with e-commerce, because the website really is your shop, any downtime means the doors are closed. So if you're on crappy hosting, there's going to be quite a bit of downtime. And someone said to me the other day, but my hosting has 99.9% uptime. Yeah, but that still means it's down for at least a whole day of the year. So, I mean, that means you're closed one day of the year where you don't want to be closed as well. So good quality hosting, and then with the CMS side of things, often we will take a client who is on an old CMS, keep the design the same, and move them to a new CMS, or a current cloud-based CMS like Shopify or BigCommerce, and keep the design the same or almost the same. So, because there's nothing wrong with the design, the problem is in the software. And an e-commerce business is different because the whole business effectively runs on top of that e-commerce platform. So that's where they're managing the customers and the orders, and they do all the work inside that piece of software. So if it's really basic or it doesn't have a lot of these newer features, then that means the business is inefficient and has all these other problems. So usually these days we will move the customer to Shopify. That's my e-commerce platform of choice at the moment because it's fast. So it's on their hosting environment. They take care of all that. It's cheap. It has a whole bunch of features. It's updated regularly. It's search engine friendly, and it just works. So
yeah, and what about support for something like Shopify? Because a lot of the people listening to this, a lot of our clients are through Australia and New Zealand. So there's good support because quite often a lot of these things are US centric that I've experienced in the past. So to try and get the service for a company who's in Australia, it's sort of they've got to try and call them up at 2:00 in the morning our time to get someone there if it's not 24/7. So
I've never had. Well, there's two parts to that. One is because it's a cloud-based CMS and it's a lot more reliable and robust. There's less need for support. You don't need to call support because it's down all of a sudden, which you often get with a third-party CMS or a CMS from a web company. So you're relying on support less, and typically it's more responsive. And if there is a system-wide problem, they're onto it. But I've never had that issue where I have to be up in the middle of the night to call them. I haven't had that yet, and I deal with a lot of e-commerce clients, so I think that's really a non-issue. That would be an edge case where you have to actually get on the phone to them, I think.
Yeah, times have changed, haven't they?
Yeah.
It used to be back in the day when you were running your e-commerce business, you had to have your own servers that you were managing, and you had all sorts of complications and expenses. So when you see what it costs now to set up
it's nothing.
It's nothing.
So
it's ridiculous.
Back then, so that was only 2004, and I can tell you the servers we had. So we had 2 servers for the website itself. We had a website server and a database server. So they were IBM servers, so they were $5,000 to $10,000 each. They sat in a hosting environment that we had to pay money for to have the servers there. We had a server that just managed the ticket and customer service system. So that, there's another couple of $1,000s of hardware, and then it needs to be maintained. And then we had a server to do the email. We had a Exchange server. So that's 4 servers for what? So in my business today, or today for any business, those servers would be maybe, to get the same services, $100, maybe $200 a month, depending on the size of the business. So
yeah, easily. And you're looking at something like Shopify for getting started. Like I think this is US prices, but about $29 US a month for the basic entry level Shopify account, which would probably suit a lot of people who are just starting up an e-commerce store. But even then, the next jump to that for the professional one is $79. So that that's really inexpensive.
Yeah. The other thing is we had 1.5 full-time developers working on the site. So we had a full-time guy sitting there doing programming and looking after the site, and then we had another guy who was spending some of his time on it as well. Like, think about that. That's 1.5 staff at Western wage rates. That's ridiculous. So
yeah, and look, there's plenty of examples, and we're just talking about Shopify at the moment or BigCommerce. You could probably look across either of them, and they're very similar in what they have. But in terms of the variations of size of people who have e-commerce stores, from your little sort of corner store, equivalent of a e-commerce shop, right up to a multinational, Fortune 500 store, they're all using these sorts of platforms, aren't they? And everywhere in between. And now, obviously a lot of big e-commerce stores have their own customized stuff that they've done. But do you think there's a limit to these types of services like Shopify? Do you think for the average person listening to this podcast, this is going to do the job well and truly? Would that be an accurate statement?
I would say for 80 or 90% of e-commerce businesses, something like Shopify or BigCommerce or Volusion that you take off the shelf will do the job. And then the other thing is there's hundreds of other apps that plug into them. So if say Shopify can't do it directly, there's probably a piece of software that can plug into it that will do that for you. There are some cases where you might want to go into a bigger system like Magento, but then again, you're going to need your own servers, your own staff to manage it. Something like that needs full-time support resources and developers and all sorts of stuff. So you got to look at the cost benefit to that. Sure, if you were like a big multinational chain with, someone like Kmart or something like that, then you want to have your own system. But I think for at least 80 or 90% of e-commerce businesses, something like Shopify off the cloud would do all they need to do.
Awesome. And of course, if someone wants to get advice or guidance on this, they can get in touch with you. So just get in touch with Brendan. We'll put your contact details in the show notes. And also, you've got an e-commerce membership site as well, Pareto e-commerce, which a lot of people who are getting started, or what sort of level would you say people who are in e-commerce would benefit from being on your system in terms of the membership site?
Well, I'd say they probably need to be doing at least a few thousand, $5,000 to $10,000 a month in sales. But
okay, so not for beginners.
Not for beginners, but using these steps. I mean, if you're a beginner and started a store, as long as you're selling the right products, if you turn the product listing ads on, and you can probably DIY them, and you could also DIY getting up and running with a basic template in Shopify, you could easily get to that $5,000 a month in revenue just by using a few of these tools.
Okay, cool. Anyway, your contact details for that and links to that will be in the show notes. So
cool.
That'd be awesome. So what's next on the list?
What's next?
We've gone through these platforms of what people can use, and that's certainly a good place to start if they don't want to get complicated.
Yep. So the next one I see all the time is getting e-commerce tracking turned on in Google Analytics. I don't know why more people don't know about this, but I see it probably at least half the e-commerce businesses that I work with don't have this turned on. But so Google Analytics the sales data can be pushed into your Google Analytics. And what that enables you to do is see which traffic sources and what's generating the sales, so you can focus on doing more of that or turn things off, or you can actually see the sources of revenue and the sources of sales and then change the strategy appropriately. So that's a pretty simple setting. It's a couple of clicks and it's free too.
Yeah. And of course, that is one thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, since Google did the Hummingbird update back in September 2013, God blimey, that's a long time ago now. It's far out. And have, in terms of their privacy policy, whatever that was that they said was the reason for this, that the keyword-specific terms aren't showing up in your SEO traffic anymore as to how people came into your site. Mm-hmm. You can see it through AdWords. I'm assuming you can still see that through Google Shopping in terms of the traffic.
You can in the AdWords side of things. So you can go into AdWords,
Yeah, in the AdWords side of things. But so any of the traffic that's still coming through from analytics as a organic search is not going to show up, correct?
That's correct. So it'll just say that it's organic search. It won't show you the actual keywords.
Okay, cool. All right. So that's a very quick win that people can do, and it's not complicated.
And the thing is, like, a lot of people think, I'm not going to use that. But 12 months down the track, like if you go and work with someone like me, that data is immensely powerful because I can just log in and say, well, this is working. Let's do more of that. And we can often you can double the sales just by having that data, and using that data to make better decisions.
Yeah, analytics is one of those tools, like any of these things, where it's probably only getting used to 5% of its capacity of what it can do, because it's such an in-depth, complex system. So often it's you don't know what you don't know, and this is obviously one of those. If you keep coming across this with your clients that you start dealing with for e-commerce and they don't have this switched on, then it's not getting talked about enough by the sounds of it. So here we are talking about it. And very cool.
Cool. So
anything else on that, or you want to go to the next subject?
Let's go to the next one.
Okay.
So we've got 4 more to go. So the next one is abandoned cart email system. So let's explain what it is. So an abandoned cart is any time someone comes to the website, puts together a shopping cart, gets some part way through the checkout process, and leaves the website without completing the checkout. So that's called an abandoned cart. An abandoned cart email system or recovery system or cart abandonment system, what that does, it allows you to follow up and email the people or touch base with the people who got through partway through the checkout process and ask them or interact with them, send them offers, ask them what went wrong, and potentially recover the sale.
Yeah.
And this is usually powerful because if they haven't completed the checkout process, there's a whole bunch of different reasons. They could have got distracted, internet dropped out, something basic like that, and emailing them will just re-trigger that process. there could be something more complex, like they're looking at competitors and someone else has a cheaper product or cheaper shipping or supports a payment method that you don't, or something along those lines. So it's very powerful in terms of finding out what went wrong and getting feedback from customers. And it doesn't... there's a lot of stuff out there on the web about cart abandonment emails, and most people are doing it wrong. So when people set it up, often they'll set it up with a goal of getting those sales back. They're so focused on, well, I've lost this sale, I need to get it back. That's really the secondary goal. It's nice if we have this set up and we get the sales back. What our primary goal is really to uncover the reason why they left and fix that. So if you're getting consistent feedback that, hey, I want to pay with PayPal, you don't have PayPal on the website, then...
that's very good point. Because, sorry to cut in there, but it's in my head that this happens a lot to me. I'm always abandoning shopping carts all the time. So I'm sure I'm not the only one, So, if I go in and for some reason I didn't, you said I maybe wanted to pay with PayPal and they didn't have it, and then I abandoned the shopping cart because I discovered that, quite often I'll get an email from whoever it is saying, sorry to see you didn't get the products, blah, blah, blah. We'll give you an extra 10% off.
Yep.
Now, that isn't solving the actual issue.
Nope.
Because the 10% off isn't going to entice me to go back because I don't have PayPal. So asking the question is far more important than just making another offer.
Yep.
So they're very important. If people didn't latch on to that, they need to think about that very thing that Brendan said, because that's far more critical than just trying to get the sale again.
Yeah, I see it. So I have a module in Pareto e-commerce where I explain it like this. So I explain it as if you think about it like this. If you had a retail store, let's call it Ed's Apple Store, where you sell Apple computers.
Oh, goody.
And
let's set that up.
Someone comes into your store, Ed, and they poke around, they're looking at computers or whatever, they're picking up products, sniffing around, and they leave the shop without buying anything.
Mongrels.
Can you imagine running down the street after them, chasing after them, screaming out discounts? Hey, come back, buy whatever. You need to buy this computer. Hey, I'll give you 10% off, or I'll give you 20% off, or
it's
no,
very
I'll give you
desperate.
40% off, and I'll give you something for free. I'll throw this in.
Yeah.
That's usually the way most people are doing abandoned cart emails. You'll see that most people are setting them up with 3 emails, where the first one is like here's 5% off, or a $10 coupon, or free shipping, or something like that. And then the discount gets bigger every email, which doesn't really make sense. So, and I hate discounts as a marketing tool because they're big and blunt. And like you said, exactly in your scenario, that the problem has nothing to do with price often. It's something else. So if you're just throwing away discounts, sure, you'll get some people who will come back and say, hey, that's a good deal. I'll take that 10 or 20% off. And then suddenly, you kind of have this survivor bias where you've justified sending the email. You're like, oh, well, we're getting all these sales now because we're giving this discount. But you don't know the other side of the coin. There might be all these things that are broken with the site that you'll never discover because you're not asking the question. So that's what I mean around the focus. Don't focus on getting the sale back. Focus on finding out why the sale didn't happen and fix that instead. That'll give you the big long-term win. So you'll fix that problem, which will give you that win for every other person who comes to the site. And it's just a better way to market. Like, it's so sleazy. It seems funny to me when I just get these automatic emails that are they're a bit slimy, just throwing discounts out at me. And it's kind of like, well, why didn't you just give me 10% off in the first place? That doesn't really make sense that now that I've left, you're happy to give me a discount. So it kind of makes me feel a bit funny as well, in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So very, very good point.
Yep.
Very good point. So in terms of abandoned shopping carts, what else? Because that's a critical thing, is actually getting more information for fixing up your systems and your processes and your offers. So
we'll link to a template that I use for most clients as the base for the abandoned cart email. And typically I will only send one email because, again, it's kind of that running down the street chasing after someone scenario. Yeah. More emails may work or it may not, but most people do email marketing badly. So if you're doing it yourself, you're better off to send one high-quality email that gets a response rather than throwing out 3 emails that are just taking a stab at the sale. It's a poor style of selling, if that makes sense.
Very good. Top tip. Very good, buddy. What's next?
Cool. So what's next is very similar, going through and customizing all the emails that go out of the system automatically. Because a lot of people, I buy from an online store and I know, because I know what a lot of the default template emails say, and particularly Shopify will buy, because a lot of people use Shopify, or a lot of e-commerce sites use Shopify. When I buy something, I'll get the order confirmation email will just be the default template of Shopify, which is kind of like, I'm like, oh, great.
Lazy.
Yep. So my next step would be to go through and customize and personalize all the emails that come out of the system. And there's no right or wrong thing to do here. What I explain to clients I work with is you got to think of your customer as if they were your best friend buying from the shop. So if your best friend bought from your store, think about the emails that you would manually write to them. Hey, your order shipped. Usually, we use this courier for shipping or this courier. Here's the tracking number. Usually it takes 3 to 5 days to arrive. In some cases, it might be a little bit longer if you're in a regional area. You can track the status here. Here's the tracking code. If there's anything you need in the meantime, hit reply on this email. And, you might have another few bits and pieces in there as well. Some tips on setting it up or some extra information about it. But most of the emails that come out are rubbish. They're just very dry. They're not like that at all. They're not very personal style. So just going through and customizing them and writing them as if you're writing to your best friend will make the world of difference in terms of the feeling the customer gets from your store, and they're more likely to come back and they just have a better perception of you, your store, and your brand.
Yeah, because that's the whole point of, having an email system and doing things is you want them to come back and come back and come back. So if you're not treating the customer correctly, then they're not going to keep coming back. So
yep.
I keep going back to a lot of e-commerce stores. Unfortunately, most of the ones I keep going back to are all the ones that my daughter wants to shop at, and she wants to use my credit card. So I sign up, so I get the emails because it's got my credit card details on it. So I'm signed up to about 20 different teenage girl clothing websites at the moment. And I keep getting all their promotions. I'm going, oh, my God, what have I done? But some of them are very good. There's some very clever ones that she buys stuff from, and others, as you say, they're lazy. So
Yep.
Awesome.
Cool. So that's emails. And always sending from a personal... Well, at least give the customer the option to reply, like sign it off with your name, ask them, tell them they can reply if they need anything. And I don't like using the, hey, first name mail merge thing. We've talked about it before, I think, in the email episode, but at least 30% of the time, unless you've gone through and cleaned it up, the data in the first name field is usually, some people put their first and last name in that field. They might use it all lowercase. So if you have hey, so if I had hey Ed and it was lowercase ed, you kind of read that and it makes you feel a bit funny. It kind of breaks that personalization.
It's straight away. I get a lot of them that says, hey, my surname, hey, Keay-Smith.
Yeah.
I'm going, what? Come on, seriously? So what would you recommend? That's a very good point. How do you overcome that without taking the...
Again, if we do it like if we go back to that thing about it in a retail scenario, if you had a retail store and you had a customer walk in, you wouldn't know their name, so you wouldn't go up. I wouldn't know that you were Ed coming to my store, so I wouldn't say, hey, Ed. I would say, hey, I'm Brendan. So you'd start the email off in a similar way. Hey, Brendan here. Hey, Brendan here from Ed's Computer Shop, or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's much safer, isn't it, really, when you think about it?
Yeah.
Because you're not going to have that accident happen. And it happens a lot. I mean, I get it all the time.
Yeah.
And, sometimes the systems are not foolproof. And they pick up the data or display it, and it's also reliant on the person inputting the data correctly in the first place.
Yeah. The other thing is that I talk about a lot with people I work with is, so in person, like something like 80% of communication is nonverbal. So, that's great to understand for in-person stuff. Now, when you're talking about stuff on the web, there's fewer things that people have to kind of get the communication, or when you're communicating on the web, there aren't those non-verbal cues. So these tiny little details like this have a disproportionate effect on how that communication is felt and understood and the message that it's trying to get across. So these seem like stupid things that they don't really matter. It's like, whatever, that doesn't matter. But because of the medium, because there aren't those non-verbal cues, these subtle tiny tweaks and changes make all the difference.
Yep, very true.
Cool. All right, next. Pretty simple. Have two payment gateways.
Yeah. Yeah. We've definitely talked about that one in the past, so that's a very important one. So give us an example of what is a payment gateway, first of all, for those who don't know, because there will be some who don't know what we're talking about, and then what examples would you use to differentiate a couple of different ones?
So payment gateway is basically methods to take credit card online, and there's a couple of reasons for using two. I would always say use PayPal and like a standard credit card merchant processor like Stripe or eWay. And there's a couple of reasons why you use two. One, a lot of people like to pay with PayPal, particularly if they don't trust you so much, because PayPal as a customer, it's a lot easier to get your money back with PayPal from dodgy retailers. So customers usually have more trust using that. And also for me, when I'm buying from overseas, I don't pay any overseas credit card transaction fees on my credit card for buying in a foreign currency. So I prefer that as well. The other reason is, again, this is the money-taking element of the site. So it is software. So at some point, one of those payment gateways might break or might be flaky or might have some sort of issue that's making it slow. So having two gives the customer that option. They're sitting there in the checkout and say something's wrong with Stripe or eWay. It might only be a couple of hours a year that system is down, but it's going to be down, so you've got to expect it. So having that second payment gateway allows the customer to still complete the process, the checkout process. And you're not losing the sale.
Good point. So just to be clear here, because I have had clients in the past get confused with this point. So technically, PayPal, and correct me if I'm wrong, is both a payment gateway and a merchant account as well, because it's taking the money and it is the actual gateway for the transaction.
Correct.
Whereas eWay is purely a gateway payment system. It is not. But that has to be connected to your merchant account from your bank. So you would set up an online merchant account with whoever you bank with or whoever you want to set it up with, and then that has to be fed through the payment gateway such as eWay. And then we've got Stripe, which is more similar to PayPal, where it's all in one. It is the gateway and it is the merchant all wrapped up in one. So if you want to have your own merchant account separate to something like PayPal or Stripe, you need to go to your bank, get that set up, and then eWay would be one of the best ones out there to connect to. So two different things achieving the same result, but one's a bit more complicated. The eWay merchant is a few more hoops to jump through in terms of getting set up.
And particularly if you've got a bigger store, it's good. So on all my properties, web properties, I've got eWay and I've got PayPal, but I also have a Stripe account that's set up. It's not connected, but it's set up in case something goes wrong. Something goes wrong with my bank or eWay or whatever, I can just log in. It's going to be technical to switch it over, but I can switch it over quite quickly if there is some sort of issue like that. So it's always good to have a backup plan. So if you have a standard merchant account, then go and set up a Stripe account. It's just going to sit there until you use it. So
awesome. And the only thing I think to keep in mind with something like Stripe is they've got a 7-day clearing process for the funds. It's not instant, whereas merchant, it's typically within 24 hours your money goes through. Okay, awesome.
Cool.
Anything else on that point?
No, that's it. So I've got one more, and that is to at least test live chat on your site. You don't have to run it forever, but I'd say at least try it for 30 days if you've never had it installed before. And I think we've talked about this on another episode.
We have, but certainly worth talking about again.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to the abandoned cart email thing, where there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff on your site that's broken or not optimal, or the customers aren't going to like it, or there's going to be some sort of issue the customer has with it. And having the live chat, especially if it has a proactive chat option, allows you to interact with visitors in real time while they're on the site. And even if you just pick up one thing that's not right, they might not be. The common one is what's the shipping cost, or what payment methods do you accept? Those are the common problems or common questions we see asked. But you pick up one or two of those things and fix them on the site, and it can make the world of difference in terms of getting the sales.
Oh, absolutely. We've got a client who's a travel agent, and they get a lot of sales through their live chat because people just want to ask a question about the holiday or the package or whatever it is. Typically they would hop on the phone, but if they've got someone there they can ask in 2 seconds, then their conversion rates for the packages go up a hell of a lot quicker. So, and we I mean, I know you use the same thing that I use. We use something called Zopim, Zopim, which we have a link to for. That's a good one. There's live chat. There's several others, but Zopim's a good one. That's part of the Zendesk organisation from memory. So.
Yep. But that's worth trying out. Even the little subtle things you'll see in the communication can make a big difference. And also on the just talking about the shipping and credit card stuff, one easy win around that is adding your shipping info and credit card or payment info to every single product page on your e-commerce website, because with the product listing ads, customers will be hitting the product pages directly. So if you have all the information they need before they make a purchase, then it's much more likely that they're going to hit the add to cart button and check out. So the important information is shipping costs and how can they pay, and there might be a few other bits and pieces around that particular type of product. So adding that to all the product pages can be a very easy way to increase sales as well.
Awesome. Absolute gold.
Cool. So that's like, if we're working with a client, that was probably that. Even though it seems like a little amount of work, that could be 3 months worth of work, maybe 6 months worth of work for a bigger client. So,
yeah, I mean, we simplified it in terms of bullet points, really, in what we're talking about. But there is quite a lot of work that needs to be done around the majority of what we said. Some of them are quite quick, like the Google Analytics e-commerce tracking thing, as you said, is not a big job to set up.
No.
And it's just a case of knowing that it is there and going and connecting it. But other things can be more time-consuming to do, of course, like setting up a whole ad campaign on Google Shopping for the paid side of things. You know, that if you've got thousands of products, then you've got to spend the time doing all the keyword research and getting all that set up. So there's a whole host of things that can take longer to do, or building a completely new website. I mean, that's a whole other story, you know.
Yeah.
But it does make it easier for, think of how complicated it was 10 years ago to go and set up an e-commerce site. You didn't have the Shopifys. I mean, I think 10 years ago there was Yahoo Shopping was probably the closest thing to this from memory.
Yeah, I'd say so.
And that was, pretty average, I thought. I've mucked around with it a few times. Compared to the slickness of what you've got now with Shopify and BigCommerce.
Yeah.
You really don't have to be technical to set it up, even if you don't go and customize the look and feel of the e-commerce store and stick with one of their sort of templates they've got. It's still going to be better than what you'd probably try and create yourself, So
yeah. I think it's fine to roll the template, particularly at the start. Like we've talked about in other episodes, good quality commercial photos. It's much better, much smarter idea if you've got a limited budget to put the money there than into custom design.
Yeah, because that's it. Because, I mean, you could have a site set up selling cameras using a template. And, there may be someone else who's using the very same template in Shopify or BigCommerce, but they could be selling children's clothes, and it's very unlikely the same a client or customer is going to end up on both sites and go, oh, that looks the same as that one.
Yeah.
And look, it's only so many ways websites can really look. Not really. There's thousands of ways they can look. That was a silly thing to say. But I don't think people really store in their memory exactly how a website looks because they're looking at so many, they sort of forget. So, I think people get hung up on that probably a little bit too much. Yeah. And their logo. Don't get me started on their logo. I had a client that wanted to spend $2,000 getting a logo designed that I was speaking to a little while ago. I'm going, you are so better spending that money in so many other areas than getting a logo designed.
Yeah.
And then I sent it to Logo Nerds, and for $50, she was quite gobsmacked what she could get done that would completely do the job. So
yeah.
Many other things to get checked off in terms of marketing and web presence than just the logo. So.
For sure.
All right, I'll get off that soapbox. All right, thanks, mate. That's fantastic. So if anyone wants to speak to you, because in terms of e-commerce, out of the two of us, you are definitely the one to speak to, because I do. I speak to Brendan. If I get stuck with anything to do with e-commerce, Brendan's the man. So you'll put your email, but what's the best email address to get you on for anything e-commerce related?
Is it's probably Brendan at ParetoEcommerce.com.
And Pareto is spelled
Pareto. P-A-R-E-T-O, so Pareto, as in the Pareto principle.
Yes, the 80-20 principle. So Pareto, ecommerce.com.
Yep, that's
Fantastic. That'll be in the show notes as well.
Awesome.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks, buddy.
Solid gold as usual. We'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks, everyone, for listening.
See ya.
Bye now. You've been listening to the Business Marketing Show. You can find us at businessmarketingshow.com on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Stitcher.